The Nebraska Cornhuskers finally broke their bowlless streak, if that's even a term of usage. They did it. They're going bowling for the first time since the end of the Barack Obama presidency. 2016 was the last time the Cornhuskers went to a bowl game, and they're going to one this year. They're going to be playing Boston College. And while I will be covering that game and Nebraska's season is not over, ultimately bowl season isn't what it used to be. For Nebraska, it's very special. A lot of their players who will be gone after this year are playing in the bowl game. But I want to take a little bit of a look ahead, because their bowl game isn't for several days, if not more than a week away from now. So I want to take a look into 2025 and peer into the future and see what the Cornhuskers might look like next year, and talk about their staff changes, what they need to do in the portal, and all things Cornhuskers. All things go Big Red. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below of Nebraska's roster movement, any concerns you have, any praises you have, what you think of John Butler being named the defensive coordinator and Dana Holgorsen being named the offensive coordinator. Let me know down in the comment section below. We'll kick this off with Nebraska hiring Dana Holgorsen as the offensive coordinator officially. He was the interim offensive coordinator against USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa. A record of 1-2, but he crushed Wisconsin. Nebraska had not beaten Wisconsin in over a decade, came close to beating Iowa, and I thought did an okay job against USC. And Holgorsen's been a former head coach. He's an offensive mastermind. He has his origins in the Mike Leach offense. And I think that with Dylan Raiola, with the receivers that Nebraska's brought in before and who they're probably going to bring in through the portal, and just how they're constructed, how their offensive line function this year, I think this is a good hire. I grade this hire as an A+, because I think that his scheme, which is very adaptive, he can run the ball if need be, create explosivity there. He can pass the ball if need be and create plays there. I think it'll help Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola is a pro-style quarterback. He's not as immobile as, let's say, Cade McNamara or Kyle McCord, but he's not as mobile as let's say, Will Howard or Drew Aller or Aiden Childs or many of these other quarterbacks in the Big Ten, even Iowa's Brennan Sullivan, for example. He's not that mobile. So Raiola is someone who's only going to be making plays really with his arm, maybe occasionally his legs, but that's very occasional. The good news for Raiola is the offensive line this season was much better at pass blocking for much of the year than run blocking. And I also think that Nebraska, you bring back Thomas Fidone, and they have some nice receivers, a young guy in Ja'Cory Barney Jr., for example. And Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks didn't pan out in the way that Nebraska hoped, but they made a change at wide receivers coach as well, a change that I liked. I'm focusing on the coordinators because the coordinators run the show, but ultimately I do evaluate all these assistants for these Big Ten schools especially, and I will do so. But I mostly care about Dana Holgorsen, and I think that his hiring was the best move possible. You brought him in the regular season. That showed a willingness of Rhule to change and adapt that I really liked, and he did well. So, reward him in some capacity. Maybe you could have gotten another offensive coordinator. Maybe there is a better option at offensive coordinator, but Nebraska hired him. He's their guy, and I really like it. And there's not much else that I want to talk about in this regard because I think it's the ideal hire. I think that he's going to do well, and I think Nebraska's offense is going to be the best that it's had since, I don't know, I'd have to go back to a year in Nebraska football that I'm unfamiliar with. It's certainly going to be better than every offense since 2021, and it might even be better than the 2021 offense, I think, based off of the moves I'm anticipating from Nebraska to make in the portal and also who they hired as their offensive coordinator in Dana Holgorsen and the talent they have existing on offense. A hire that I'm not as high on. I'm not calling it an F. I don't think it's this total embarrassment, but I do think it was somewhat weak. I think Nebraska could have done better, was the hiring of John Butler as the defensive coordinator and DB's coach. The DB's coach was the worst unit for Nebraska all season long, which was a bit interesting because it was a unit that was returning a lot of production. Linebacker was hit the hardest by attrition entering 2024, and they did well. And the D-line did well too. It wasn't great, but it was good relative to the expectations. And I think linebacker, in fact, was great relative to expectations. DB was pretty bad. DB was poor relative to what was returning, the expectations. I don't think that they were well coached. And John Butler, here's a little bit of a dirty secret. His only season as a defensive coordinator was at Penn State in 2013, where they did not finish inside the top 50 of scoring defense. Now, again, they were dealing with sanctions then at Penn State. Didn't have all the talent necessary. There was no portal back then. So I could be wrong. Again, I'm not an elite X's and O's guy. I'm not a coach. Never have been. Never will be. And I'm not an insider either. But I can tell you, looking at the analytics, looking at how his room did this year, the fact that, with the Bills in the NFL, he did good, but it's not like his defense was legendary. I have some concerns here. And more importantly than any of this, more than John Butler, I think, is the fact that the defensive scheme for Nebraska is not going to be changed, at least as the base defense. It sounds like they're going to stick with the 3-3-5, which for Baylor in 2019, 2018 was perfect. You're playing Lincoln Riley, you're playing in the Big 12, everything's high-flying, it's an offensive scoring affair, it's an offensive renaissance. We're in a new era of college football, though. 2024 is not like 2019. You have the portal, you have NIL. The game's also shifting to the defenses, in part because there are fewer possessions, because of the running clock rules, and also schemes have caught up to the RPO. They've caught up to the spread. Adaptation has been made possible. You can thank DeAnton Lynn. You can thank Jesse Minter. You can thank Mike McDonald. You can thank Jim Knowles for tweaking his defense. I mean, there's so many defenses that we've seen limit higher scoring, high flying offenses. And as a result, Steve Sarkisian and Lincoln Riley's offenses are not, they're not the best offenses in the country anymore. And they haven't been for 2 years. If not, some would say even longer than that. So I think that to have success in the Big Ten, it's the same thing with Wisconsin, by the way. Wisconsin, I think, wants to get to a point and should get to a point where you can play with 4 down defensive linemen. I just don't think they have the depth for that right now, which is why they're playing that, 3-3-5, 2-4-5. Or maybe they were doing that because that's the defense that Phil Longo preferred. And now that they fired him, maybe they'll move on. But John Butler was an inside promotion, which typically inside promotions, unless it's an assistant coach who's doing phenomenally with his position group, are not a good idea. And even then, some people are meant to be assistant coaches, position coaches, but they're not meant to be coordinators. It's a whole different level of responsibility. And there's no scheme change. The 3-3-5 killed Nebraska in multiple games this year. Against Ohio State, it didn't, but Ohio State was limited on the offensive line. It killed them against USC in stopping the run, killed them against Indiana in stopping the run and getting pressure. It killed them in other games too. And even against UCLA, defense was on the field forever, and it's UCLA. Like, they don't have a lot of talent. They don't have a lot to work with. So I did not like this hire. When I saw it, I just kind of rolled my eyes. It's not the total polar opposite of the Dana Holgorsen hire, but it's close. Holgorsen, in my mind, A+ hire, elite hire. He's a former head coach, offensive mastermind, so he can be the head coach of the offense. Maybe that will help this hire because now maybe Matt Rhule will focus more on the defense, but I just kind of shrug my shoulders at this and think Nebraska could have done better. This is not a home run hire, I don't think, and with Tony White going to Florida State and Terrence Knighton, I think that John Butler is a downgrade from Tony White defensively, and sometimes you have to downgrade because there's no option that's better, but I don't think that was the case with Tony White after this past season where the defense was a little bit disappointing for me. So what does Nebraska need to do in the portal? Well, must-haves are running back depth because Gabe Ervin Jr. and Ramir Johnson are gone. Emmett Johnson returned from the portal, which is awesome. It's something to celebrate. I think he's going to be a really good Big Ten running back next year, but maybe getting like a third guy, maybe that would be a good idea. And I think that I do think with how Nebraska, what they want to do on offense, it would be very helpful to have a third guy. I don't know if it's a must-have in hindsight, because I have it listed as that, but also Nebraska did not have a clear RB1. Emmett Johnson emerged as one potentially at the end of the year, but will he be that way next year? Who knows? And I don't think Dante Dowdle's running back number one. Dante Dowdle is Nebraska's Master Teague. He just has pure downfield vision, doesn't cut very well, doesn't have horizontal ability. He's mainly just a downfield power back. You need someone more than him. So that's another reason why it could be a must-have, is maybe you want someone better than Dante Dowdle to go along with Emmett Johnson. You want to use Dante Dowdle more so situationally, if he would do that. Wide receiver, O-line, D-line, I think are more so must-haves than anything else, though. The trenches have been horrific for Nebraska over the past few years because Scott Frost didn't know how to recruit them. Now, the D-line was great at times this year, but Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson are gone. Jamari Butler is gone. Williams Nwaneri, he's transferred in. Williams Nwaneri from Missouri, and that was a good pickup. Former 5-star Nwaneri, and as a true freshman at Missouri, he did see some action. Didn't exactly see a plethora of action here, but he did have a sack, did have a solo tackle. Very talented guy, big, long. I think he'll do well at Nebraska, but they have lost a lot on that defensive line, and also lost Stephon Thompson, depth piece at linebacker, a Bayer at linebacker too. They need players on that defensive front. They need to go in the portal, get several of them, and I think that'll be a good start. And on the offensive line, Nebraska's losing some talent. They have not done the best at developing there. And it's also just a general weakness because of how Scott Frost built his team. And Nebraska was only in year 2 of a rebuild. So I think getting some help on the offensive line would also be pretty wise. And I think finally what would be nice, get some DB help. I think DB has been more of a coaching problem than a developmental problem, given how they got good portal additions, how C.R. Wright did very good this season. It was a very exciting addition for Nebraska, well paid off. Good for him, happy for him. He's a really good player. He's Nebraska's best corner this year, transfer from USC. So it'd be nice, but maybe not a necessity. And then for the quarterback position, I think with Heinrich Haarberg moving to tight end, I think that it would be good, and also Daniel Kalen entering the portal, it would be good to get more depth, and probably someone with legs, because this team this year was a unit where I thought to myself at times, like, okay, bring in Heinrich Haarberg, because he has legs, and that'll help him negate some of the issues of the offensive line. I think it would be wise for Nebraska to bring in a depth piece at quarterback, a guy with some legs, a guy who you can... they'll probably still use Heinrich Haarberg with some wildcat and with some wrinkle position groups or plays next season. But it would be helpful, I think, to add some QB depth, so that would be nice. Overall, I think that the aggression in the portal has been good, but the staff could do better. There could be better staff additions. There could be better coaching. So we'll see if any more moves will be made. I know Nebraska's hired a lot of assistant coaches. I have not pooled over them as much as I have the coordinators, because I think the coordinators are very important, are more important. But I will look at the assistants, and I think after the bowl game, I will go over and grade everything Nebraska's done so far, coaching wise and transfer portal wise in the future. So there will be definitely more done, because I expect more moves in the portal in favor of Nebraska. But so far, from what I see, I like the aggression in the portal, poaching a guy from Missouri who's very highly rated. I expect other highly rated moves, and recruiting's been well. But coaching's very important. I think coaching can be better for the Huskers. Looking into next year and peering into it with expectations, I think that 7-5 or worse is an absolute failure. 8-4, you're feeling good, you're feeling all right. But at 8-4 with next year's schedule, Nebraska probably doesn't beat anyone of significance. They probably still don't beat a top 25 team next season if they go 8-4. You go 9-3 or better, you probably beat a team who's top 25 at the end of the year, or at least at the time you played them, and you get to 9 wins, which means you probably finish the regular season ranked inside the top 25. I think 9-3 or better is a success. 8-4 is just A-okay, just all right. 7-5 or worse, I would say that is a failure, straight up. So that's my view of the expectations surrounding Nebraska entering 2025. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who you know enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation, because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Kylo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page, or super chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.